It is your Monday daily delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope everyone's having a great day out there and had a great weekend. Little bit of a different Monday than usual. Patrick Royce out on vacation. Hope he'll join me on a show later this week. I think that'll happen, but nothing locked down yet. But today, Andrew Krammer from the Star-Tribune joins me coming off of that first Vikings preseason game on Saturday. Plenty to talk about with that. J.J. McCarthy's debut looking good in purple. Sam Darnold gets the start. We break down his kind of long single series, what he did well, how the defense is looking, the new kickoff rules. Stephon Gilmore, the veteran corner, expected to visit today. Maybe that is an addition to the team. So lots to get to with the Vikings after they won a preseason game for the first time in 5 years, by the way, since 2019. It's quite a streak, 24-23 over the Raiders. Their only preseason game at U.S. Bank Stadium. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. Aaron Rodgers has a new book coming out. If you didn't think I was going to talk about that a little bit, you are sorely mistaken, and you have not been listening to this podcast for the last 3.5 years. So I'll get to that at the end of the show as well. A little bit of USA basketball talk and Olympics thoughts here in just a minute. First, though, what did I miss? Twins and Cleveland played 4 games over the weekend, doubleheader Friday, and then 2 games Saturday and Sunday. Twins chopped Cleveland's lead all the way down to a game and a half after a doubleheader sweep on Friday. And you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, all the momentum in the world, right? Momentum can be overrated in sports a little bit, which they probably found out, spoiler alert, the rest of the weekend. But Cleveland, I think, had lost 7 in a row at that point. Twins surging at that point. They'd gotten a nice outing from Bailey Ober. Louis Varland had done good work in the second game. A big home run from Matt Wallner. A game and a half back at that point with 2 more home games coming up over the weekend against Cleveland. Now you're thinking, okay, split those 2. You leave that series up, down still just a game and a half in the division. You got to be feeling great about that. Sweep the whole series, win those next 2, which that doubleheader sweep had put you in a position to do. And you are in the driver's seat for the division lead. If you just look at where Cleveland is right now, what the expectations are, what the rest of the schedule looks like for both of these teams, Twins would be in the driver's seat had they won those 2 games, up half a game with the rest of the year to go. There's still, I think, 4 games between these 2 teams in Cleveland, but the Twins overall with the more favorable schedule and maybe more of, what we would call the momentum had they had won those last 2 games. Instead, a missed opportunity, not a crushing disappointment. If you went into the weekend and you looked at the pitching matchups, you look at the Twins throwing, 2 rookies, a second-year guy in Louis Varland, and a third-year guy, Louis Varland, whatever he is right now, and Bailey Ober in that series. You're looking at thinking, okay, just don't do anything worse than a split in this series, because as much as you're trying to win the division, everybody wants to win the division, and this year it probably carries even more weight because the division winner in the AL Central has a very good chance of being at least the second best team in the American League, which carries that first round bye with it. You don't have to play that best of 3 wildcard round. You can rest your rotation. You don't have to worry about losing right away. You get a bye to that division series, improves your World Series chances, your playoff chances considerably. So you're thinking, okay, no worse than a split. Well, the Twins took care of that by sweeping the doubleheader, right? They'd already guaranteed themselves of a split in the series. So at that point, you want to be greedy. At that point, you're like, okay, well, they did that. Now what else can they do? Can they really throw a scare into Cleveland? Can they make this their division to lose instead of Cleveland's division to lose? And instead, Cleveland, to their credit, they win the last 2, 2-1, 5-3. It's not like these were like blowouts, embarrassments. Not like you look at it and say, "Oh man, they fell apart, they choked," anything like that. It's just Cleveland's a good team. They've been a very good team for a lot of this season, surprisingly to some, based on all the injuries they've had, based on kind of maybe what we thought about them at the start of the season. but they're a good team. So you're like, okay, they took it. They took it back from the Twins. So you're not mad. You're just like, it's disappointing. You had an opportunity to do a lot more this weekend after what Friday set you up to do, and instead you're sitting here right now at the exact same place you started the weekend, 3.5 games behind Cleveland. Not a bad place to be. Again, plenty of season left. Still got a decent chance at the division race. Still got a good chance to be a wild card, things like that. So not all hope is lost, but the disappointment is that the opportunity was there and the Twins could not seize it for whatever reason. And it was not Byron Buxton's fault. He accounted for all the runs Sunday, solo home run early, 2-run shot later to try to get them back in the game, but it was to no avail. Not enough offense right now, and not enough in those last 2 games to throw a threat into Cleveland. Now, it doesn't get any easier. They play Kansas City in a 3-game series starting today. I think we talked to Bobby Nightingale Jr. late last week about kind of what the outcome of this 7-game stretch, how the Twins would want it. He said, win 4 of the 7, any combination of that. Well, the Twins have won 2 already, so that means taking 2 out of 3 from the Royals, who've been playing very well. They are right behind the Twins in the division race as well, right behind the Twins in Cleveland, battling for that wild card as well. So they are right there in the mix. Undoubtedly have the best player in the division. Bobby Witt Jr. has been tremendous this season. So another opportunity for the Twins to, put some distance between themselves and Kansas City, maybe gain some ground on Cleveland, or vice versa. So whatever happens in this series, again, feels like it will be important. I kind of went into Sunday's Twins game thinking whoever won that game is going to win the division. For the Twins' sake, I hope I'm wrong about that, but that felt like it was pretty important for Cleveland to restore that 3.5 game lead. Felt pretty important to me. We'll see how important it is. We'll see how important these 3 games are coming up this week as well. On the contrary, a team that seized the opportunity, U.S. women's and men's basketball teams over the weekend take gold, both of them beating host country France. Both the games, a fair amount of drama. The men need, some big-time shooting from Steph Curry to clinch that game late. The women need to hold off France with a, back and forth game. I was watching it. I was watching the fourth quarter a little bit more intently after kind of having one eye on it for a while on Sunday morning. They win 67-66. It was a one-score game for almost the entirety of the fourth quarter. And when the U.S. women got a 4-point lead, all of a sudden that was like the biggest lead you could imagine, more than a one-possession game. France almost ties it at the end. A shot goes in at the end, but on the line for a 3-pointer, maybe off by 6 inches, a foot at the most from being a 3. Women, though, 61 straight victories in the Olympics, 8 straight gold medals. It's an unbelievable run, the unbelievable pressure. Cheryl Reeve, the Lynx head coach, coaching this squad to the victory. Nafisa Collier played a big role in Sunday's game. I think she had 7 points and 11 rebounds. So all the pressure. Yes, they are the best players in the world. Yes, they have all the talent. Yes, they are favored to win. But at some point along the road, you would imagine they would get upset. But no, 61 straight wins. Capping what I think is that was the best Olympics that I can remember in a long time. And it wasn't just that the U.S. delivered some pretty clutch performances or that Minnesotans played a big role. I mean, obviously that helps with your local enthusiasm, but just felt the vibe in Paris after the last Olympics was the COVID Olympics coming out of COVID. Everybody was still kind of tentative. You couldn't really do the crowds, things like that. Paris just felt like the perfect city at the perfect time. Anytime you watched kind of the scenes outside the Olympics, it just felt like the right kind of mix of everything going on there. The artistry, the sports, everything combining into one. That was the most fun and best Olympics I can remember in a long time. I watched a ton of it. I think a lot of you did too. I think the Twin Cities were like a top 5 market for watching the Olympics among the big cities in the U.S. So everybody seemed to enjoy it. Not everything was perfect, but everybody seemed to enjoy it, and I certainly did this time around. Let's bring in Andrew Krammer right now to talk Vikings off of their first preseason game on Saturday. Andrew, What did you make of the game? They ended up winning 24-23. A lot of storylines abounding throughout. I think we're going to have to start with the quarterbacks because that was the most interesting part. That's what everybody wants to talk about. Sam Darnold starts the game. JJ McCarthy plays a lot. Plays the bulk of the game, really. I think 30 snaps he ends up playing, and a lot of good, some bad. And then Jaron Hall cleans things up at the end, brings them on a drive that ends up, with the winning field goal. They get to see their kicker clutch, kick in the clutch, stuff like that. Quarterbacks, though, what did you see from especially Darnold and McCarthy in that game?
Yeah, I think just starting with the rookie McCarthy, who everybody wants to, talk about, this was his first NFL action. And I thought it looked pretty great in terms of how he rebounded from that early interception. Kevin O'Connell talked about how he could have thrown it a bit sooner because when he threw that pick, the defender undercut a crossing route and it seemed like it was just a forced throw into tight coverage where O'Connell said, no, the window was there. The decision was good. It was just late. And then at that point, he needed to throw it away or move off of it. But then the kid rebounded. He threw a beautiful 45-yard touchdown to Tristan Jackson that to the left sideline, crosses body. I thought that was a great throw from him from the opposite hash that you just don't see a ton of rookies have the confidence to make, especially after they just threw a pick. And so to trust Tristan Jackson, a guy he's worked with a lot in camp, to go up and get that one, that was a great play and indicative of the chemistry he's capable of building with receivers and the way that you see this 21-year-old JJ McCarthy, whether it's training camp practices or even a bad play in camp, he can bounce back in a way that he just doesn't wear his mistakes. That brings down a lot of different quarterbacks or a lot of different players. So really anybody in any profession that, especially in football, athletics, you don't have the confidence to bounce back and beat the person across from you. It's going to show. And McCarthy to do that already in his first NFL action, I think that is the most encouraging part. Now, you're still going to see the up and down decision making. Again, we've seen that throughout camp. You saw that at Michigan, especially in the red zone. There were moments in Michigan that you could really want to see some growth from him when those decisions become even quicker than they were in the middle of the field yesterday at US Bank Stadium. So you see areas that he needs to grow at, same areas that coaches keep talking about, but you also see the potential and you see the arm strength. You saw him rocket some over the middle for some early completions there that I thought were really impressive and good to see in this system, because that's what they want to do with JJ. That's what they want to Jefferson. That's what they want to do with Addison, Hawkinson. They want to get these guys running across the middle of the field, catch on the run, and get yards after the catch. That's been more of that Rams O'Connell kind of MO that they've taken from McVay. And when Jefferson dominated when he was healthy in 2022 with Kirk, that's what it looked like. So I think with JJ throwing over the middle like that, some touch throws down the sideline, yeah, it was a great start from him. And then shifting back or at the start of the game, Sam Darnold comes in and there was no surprise there. He was always going to get the start. He's taken almost every first team rep in camp. We've talked about how this is going to be their plan to start him week 1. We'll see how many more starts he gets in the preseason. I would assume they want to give him a little bit more run in one of these last 2 games, but on Saturday against the Raiders, he has a 12-play, 66-yard drive. He converts some third downs, including one to Jordan Addison there. And then they stall out at the goal line just because they decided to go for it on 4th down. And in general, I thought he looked poised. He was able to move in a way that you didn't see Kirk Cousins move very often. And all in all, you can't take too much from it because it was an incredibly limited debut from him. No Justin Jefferson, no Hawkinson. No Aaron Jones at running back, who they're going to want, obviously, to hand the ball off to a lot. And then Darnold also had some headset issues, which anybody who pays close attention to the Vikings will know happens too often at US Bank Stadium with the quarterback, where Darnold said it just went out on him and he had to run to the sideline and get plays from O'Connell and run back to the huddle. It's not an ideal way to make your debut in a new offense. So all in all, it was nice to see from him, but I don't know how much you can take from it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Like, I think both of those guys have arm talent. There's no doubt about it. And going back to McCarthy in particular, like when they would show the kind of the end zone view replay and a couple of those throws over the middle, you always get a sense on those end zone replays for just how tight those windows are. and how little space you really have and how much he's got on those throws. Like those got in there quick. And again, the decision making, that's the thing that they're probably going to have to work on the most, because that's the thing that's much different in college. Like the throw he made that got picked off in Saturday's game, that's either a completion or a deflection in college, right? Like the closing speed of the corners in college, unless it's some elite corner who's going to get drafted, that's a play that's safe in college, and that's the play he's going to have to learn, as well as how fast those windows close. That's what he's going to have to learn. Do you think are they confident that part is teachable? If this has been part of his kind of MO, even at Michigan, that he can clean up that part of his game?
Yeah, and I think it's not just the speed of the game, because you're right. That adjustment is huge for any quarterback, is getting used to how quickly these windows close, how fast NFL defenders are, not just corners and safeties, but pass rushers too. There was one moment where McCarthy seemed to flee unnecessarily from the pocket. Like those kind of feel things with the NFL. That clock in his head is going to get it's going to get adjusted. It's going to reset, and that is absolutely a teachable thing. The decision making, though, and the up and down, the unevenness. Again, you saw that at Michigan, and you are seeing that at camp, right, and you're seeing that in the preseason. That's the kind of stuff that you want to see eventually get weaned out. And he's only 21. And so, no, sometimes that doesn't get fixed in quarterbacks. You've seen that throughout the years, where you see some, I guess even Darnold's a good example of this, where he's been really incredibly inconsistent, not just with accuracy, but also some of the decisions he's made at various stops. And that's what separates the guys who are franchise guys, is any kind of modicum of consistency. And that's what JJ has to try to find. He's got the talent and the head to do it. And I think the reason why the Vikings are confident behind the scenes that he can improve in that area is he himself is confident. He's not somebody who's questioning himself, who's going, oh boy, am I really up for this? Or, imposter syndrome kind of stuff. This kid wakes up and was a 5-star recruit out of high school. He's always been the golden child. And so yeah, I think that has kind of shown through him. And even with mistakes in camp, or even with the adversity he's going to face and has faced, you haven't seen it, at least at this point, get dented or limited, that confidence in him. So I think that's why the Vikings feel like this kid is going to be able, with our tutelage and the weapons and coaching around him, to kind of grow and make better and more consistent decisions, as you mentioned, as he learns the NFL game.
So he plays the bulk of the game. Darnold plays the first series. He gets the 12 plays, which is, probably the sample they wanted to see of him. McCarthy throws for almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. There's the second one. There was a nice throw, but that was wide open, busted coverage. Like most quarterbacks are probably going to make that throw, but good to recognize it. Good play, touchdown there. I'm not going to say, does this change any timelines? Because Sam Darnold is still almost certainly your week 1 starter, but with the Vikings having seen McCarthy now in a game, where do you think that puts them in their evaluation or their kind of process of how soon they think he is going to be kind of like ready for that moment, should he need to have that moment, sooner rather than later in the regular season?
Yeah, and the best laid plans, of mice and men, like these things can go awry, but the Vikings have a very, very set plan for JJ. They've had one since before, right as they drafted him. They had an idea of what they wanted to do with a rookie quarterback. They get the rookie on draft night, and then they tailor it to him. And they're going to have a day by day, practice by practice, week by week plan. As Kevin O'Connell keeps saying, progress, process, all these words, the buzzwords that he loves, that's what they keep hammering with him. And I would be shocked if they're going to let one preseason game, one decent throw, some media hype or fan hype to accelerate or change their plan for him. Kevin O'Connell's talked ad nauseum about his experiences in the NFL, how he sees organizations ruin quarterbacks by rushing them out there before they're ready, or before the team around them is ready, or the coaching or whatever. He wants to make sure that he would rather err on the side of being wrong on waiting too long to put him out there than err on the side of putting him out there too soon. And I say that in terms of regular season games, yet live action where it's Myles Garrett coming at you and not some second or third string guy. So that's the stuff that they're very mindful of. This is still going to be Sam Darnold's team in week one. I envision it's going to be his team into the middle of the season as long as he can carry it. Because they've talked about a redshirt year for McCarthy behind the scenes. And if they're truly sticking to that, they might even keep Nick Mullins on the roster as the backup to make McCarthy that number 3.
What did you see from the receivers in this game? Because obviously Jefferson didn't play. Addison did get some run, caught third down pass, like you said, from Darnold on the opening drive. There's a play where Wongwu got pushed back into Darnold and almost disrupted that whole play, or he even kind of drifted back into him and kind of got in his way. Little pass blocking issues from some of those running backs, which Aaron Jones probably should help with when he is suited up, because I believe that's a pretty decent part of his game. But limited Addison, no Jefferson, but you saw Tristan Jackson flash in this game. You saw Jalen Naylor flash. What did they do to kind of solidify maybe some questions on that kind of 3 through 6 on the wide receiver depth chart there?
Yeah, I feel like people aren't talking enough, and however much you should be talking about a third wide receiver in August, but Jalen Naylor has absolutely earned that role, so much so that they stopped playing him shortly after they stopped playing Jordan Addison. Like, he had a few catches. I think there were 18, 19, 26 yards. Like, he was producing, and they said, all right, that's enough. Come out. And he opened on the opening kickoff return with Myles Gaskin instead of Kene Nwangwu, which I found very interesting, that this new kickoff format, I kind of wonder if it's going to make Kene expendable, because this is no longer a full head of steam kind of thing. This is more like a punt return where you need to be more shifty, navigate, and kind of find the crease instead of getting that locomotive kind of run up the way that they could on the old kickoff. So they could absolutely cut Kene, keep Myles Gaskin, sign a running back off of a waiver wire or whatever. I could see them making a move there, especially if Kene's not special teams ready. But Jalen Naylor, if he's going to be a kickoff return option, wide receiver 3, he's solidified his roster spot at this point. He has a lot of fans in that building. Going back to when he was drafted out of Michigan State, the GM, Kwesi, made a point to say Keenan McCardell, the wide receivers coach, who they inherited from the previous staff, right, that was the guy who stood up on the table for him, proverbially, and said, hey, this is the guy I want. And then Kevin O'Connell's been a huge fan of Naylor ever since. And so now he's finally healthy. He had concussion issues last year, hamstring issues. He's just had a lot of things holding him back in his first 2 years. And now that KJ Osborne's gone, they need another guy to step up. And Naylor seems like that guy. And Tristan Jackson's fighting for a roster spot. I think Brandon Powell's going to be the number 4. Yep. He's really only a slot option. He's only 5'9", but he's a veteran. He's trustworthy. He's a punt returner, so he'll be on the team. And then it's that 5th spot. Yeah, it's up to Tristan Jackson. It's up to Trent Sherfield, who I believe caught that second touchdown from McCarthy. Sherfield hasn't shown a ton in camp, and Tristan Jackson's been more the guy who's been here for a few years, knows the system. Right. If they're going to keep anybody out of the group they got, I think it's probably going to be Tristan. And then he goes for 100 yards and a score on Saturday. I think that can only help his case.
Shifting to the other side of the ball on the defense, the other first-round pick, Dallas Turner, out of Alabama, unlike J.J. McCarthy, will be seeing plenty of action right away this year, and he looks the part. He was pretty disruptive in his time. What did you make of his preseason debut?
Yeah, he gets the start because you mentioned there are 2 projected starting edge rushers, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel. They spent millions of dollars in free agency to get those guys out of Houston and Miami, respectively. They didn't play. So Dallas Turner got a lot of run. So did Patrick Jones. I thought Turner looked exactly like you wanted to see in terms of that pass rush. That's the thing that came as advertised. Brian Burns, where this kid's so slender, you're like, how is he going to hold up against a lineman? And then he dips under him so quickly, and you're like, whoa, how did that happen? And he did that, and obviously took down, I can't remember if it was O'Connell or Minshew or which Raiders quarterback, but Point is, he's got the speed, he's got the moves, and he's got the bend and the kind of flexibility that's very rare for any kind of big human being like that. And so now they want to see him add muscle. They want to see him play the run, learn the techniques a little bit better, and become more of a full player. But I envision his role out of the gate week one is going to be kind of where you saw him shine in the preseason. It's going to be more rushing the passer. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a rotational guy, comes in on third downs, and really tries to give him a bump that way as they bring him along on these other facets of the game. But there's a reason why he was talked about as a top 10 pick, like why he was mocked constantly to the Falcons at like 8th overall. And it's so ironic that Kirk Cousins gets to see that guy go to the other team that he could have been on and help them. He's going to be a menace eventually. And I think fans they're probably going to clamor like McCarthy to want to see him full time. But they signed Grenard and Van Ginkel to be those starters. And those guys are much more complete players at this point.
They had to be pretty happy with their 7th round pick, too. He made some plays in this game as well.
He did, yeah. Levi Drake Rodriguez, the defensive tackle, he's been getting a lot of first team reps in camp. Just a similar deal as Turner, where he's mixing in with the interior on the first or on the third down pass rushing lines. That's kind of where he's getting most of his work, and you're seeing him produce in camp, and then you get to see when he gets to actually sack somebody in a game, he can do it. And then he had a pass deflection too. He's really hard to block. He's shifty, and you're seeing this now in the NFL where they're more willing to go with these smaller, quote unquote, undersized defensive tackles who just have the speed to beat these bulky offensive linemen. And maybe we should credit, Aaron Donald or all the way back to John Randall for opening up people's eyes to the undersized defensive tackle. But not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Levi Drake Rodriguez has done some good things.
A few more things for you, Andrew. One, the cornerback depth is not great. And for various reasons, but obviously we had the tragedy earlier on with Kyrie Jackson. Again, I hate lumping that in with all these other things like a Mekhi Blackman torn ACL or just the underdevelopment of some of the other guys, but it is a factor in their depth right now. They trade away Andrew Booth Jr., their 2nd round pick from 2022. They get another corner in return, but it seems like it's just kind of like depth for depth at this point. They've had Shaq Griffin's been injured during the preseason. You've got Byron Murphy, who ostensibly will be there, but they're talking about bringing in Stephon Gilmore for a workout on Monday. Where are they at with kind of the state of the corner position and the pecking order there?
Yeah, they've been turning over rock after rock, trying to find somebody to help them. And they said as soon as they had an offer for Andrew Booth Jr., they're like, all right, yeah, we don't need to hear anymore. We don't need to see anymore in camp. Get out of here.
See him every day.
That was Kellen Mond. That was, to me, that was not an unsurprising move because they've been signing guys like Fabian Moreau off the street, a 30-year-old veteran who steps right in and then gets first team work ahead of Andrew Booth. It shows how little they think of their depth or how little they think that those guys are ready. You got guys like Jay Ward, who at LSU was a very versatile defensive back. When they drafted him in the 4th round last year, they put him at safety, though, and they thought he was more of a safety. Well, now all of a sudden he's playing outside corner here, and I think that speaks more to the lack of options that they have. And Jay Ward played the bulk of Saturday's game because of the lack of options that they've got. So Stephon Gilmore coming for a visit is no surprise. And then Kevin O'Connell speaking very highly of Stephon Gilmore at his press conference after the game on Saturday, and then saying that if it's a possibility for us to sign Stephon, I know Kwesi will get us pointed in the right direction. That would connotate that they are not in the right direction at cornerback right now with the bodies that they have added. And that's obvious because Shaq Griffin, the guy they signed in March, injuries have really undercut his last few years. He was really good in Seattle, signed a massive deal with the Jaguars, had a really bad back injury that he talked about, felt like kind of undercut 2 years in Jacksonville before he went to Houston last year, and then still wasn't able to be fully healthy or the same person. And now he's out with a hamstring injury. And that's the guy that they kind of hung their hopes on being the starter opposite Byron Murphy Jr. So right now you've got one corner. It's Byron Murphy, and they're hoping Shaq can be healthy. They're looking at Gilmore, who's 33 years old and was drafted 19 spots ahead of Harrison Smith, a guy that they're trying to play less. So you're not going to find a full-time starter off the street at this point, but you can find ways to piece it together. And Brian Flores has been very good at piecing these things together so far, at least through the 1 year that he's been in Minnesota. So I think, what do they do now? They need to keep adding pieces and keep cycling through stuff until they find options, because I think they know, and observers can safely say the options that they need are not on the current roster.
Well, I was going to say, like, if let's take Shaq out of the equation right now, if he's hurt, like what's the healthy depth chart right now?
It's Byron Murphy Jr. and Caleb Evans who started that game. And Caleb Evans is somebody who has a lot of strengths to his game, but he was a 4th round pick out of Missouri for a reason. And it's because he doesn't play the ball very well. He's not very good in coverage. In a pass happy NFL, you're gonna kind of need that. So they've been grown frustrated with just the growth that they want to see from him that they're not seeing, and so that's why you're seeing Fabian Moreau get these first team reps. He was the next corner in after that. Then it was Jay Ward, and then I believe it would have been Dwight McGlothern, who was an undrafted rookie. Because then the guys after that were Duke Shelley, who they re-signed this offseason, AJ Green III, who's obviously a deep camp body kind of thing. So they don't have much of a healthy depth chart, Mike. And then that's why we're seeing Stephon Gilmore show up.
Man, some of those names are giving me 2013 vibes. I don't know. I nothing against them. It's just the depth got, it's perilous right now. So we'll see if they can get something done with Stephon Gilmore. Overall, what are the vibes after game one? It's just one preseason game. It's a home preseason game. You see their rookie kicker make a 37-yarder. That's probably good for them to see, especially after the first try was blocked. He made his extra points. Didn't even really talk much about the kickoffs, except kind of in the context of how it's more like a punt return now. Like, how do you think they feel coming out of this game, or what are the vibes of the Vikings right now?
The vibes are high only because you needed to see what you saw out of those two quarterbacks. You saw Darnold look competent, and you saw JJ McCarthy flash, and then that's what they wanted to see. And if those two guys can show fans and show teammates and show us in the media, as much as that matters, that they're headed in the right direction at quarterback, that's the big question. If you can answer that this year, everything else you can eventually figure out. That's fine. So I think the vibes are really good at TCO right now, in part, or not in large part, because of Darnold and McCarthy and the way they performed on Saturday. And honestly, Darnold has had a really good camp. Darnold's camp has been better than what you saw in that one drive where he's running to the sideline so he can hear the play call. He's looked pretty sharp in camp. And the big question is, when he gets the live pass rush, when he gets some adversity and gets hit and throws a pick, how is he going to bounce back? Because in the past, that hasn't been great for him. So, well, it's going to be a long season with these guys, Mike, but I think the vibes are good right now because of how right now those two quarterbacks are looking.
And they finally won a preseason game. O'Connell had never won a preseason game, right? They hadn't won one in like 4 years. August 2019 was the last time they won one, because 2020 was canceled, obviously. Right. 2021, the last three preseasons, they've gone 0-9. They haven't won a preseason game since before the pandemic until Saturday. So it's at least something for them to go on. And, as much as you don't care about results in the preseason, the one home preseason game, I suppose it's nice to win, especially when you can win and see your kicker put one through the uprights, kind of in a pressure situation.
O'Connell even called the timeouts on defense to force the punt to get the ball back. And then Antonio Pierce was calling timeouts on the opposite end, trying to stall him. So both those guys wanted to win that game.
You're like, guys, can we just get out of here? Can we go write our stories? Come on, let's go. Well, two more preseason games. I kind of forget in the new world order with 3 preseason games instead of 4. What's taking place? Is it now the second preseason game where they play everybody, and the third is mostly the kind of the outliers on the roster? Or how do they tend to play it?
Everybody does it differently, but the Vikings in this year, they're doing it differently than they normally do. So it's going to be hard to tell what the plan is going to be for these next 2 preseason games. But we do know that Kevin O'Connell said on Saturday that they want to get all those starters who didn't play in the preseason opener. They want to get those guys in those joint practices this week in Cleveland. The team will be leaving for Cleveland on Tuesday. They'll practice Wednesday and Thursday. They'll play a preseason game on Saturday at the Browns. And so I expect, and O'Connell expects, Aaron Jones, Grenard, Jefferson, all these guys to play in the practices. I would then assume that they're also not playing in the game on Saturday against the Browns. Typically, when they have these joint sessions, how the Vikings operate is they treat those as the more worthy settings to get their starters out there. They think it's a more controlled setting. They can at least try to prevent the hits. They don't take guys to the ground. They try not to fight, all those things. So they that's their preferred setting. And because they don't have joint practices before the Eagles game, which is their final preseason game, I might guess that they're going to play more starters in the finale on August 24th if they play starters a ton in these last two games. And that Browns game might be more of the Nick Mullins, even maybe a little McCarthy, that kind of a show. So it's interesting, though. Everybody does it differently. Patrick Mahomes is still playing in the preseason. I don't understand that one. No. But then you see other...
Got to see more from him. I don't know. Is he ready?
You see other teams then who just, like the Rams. McVay came out and said, I don't care what they do with this. We're never playing anybody in the preseason. And O'Connell has been a little more open to, hey, we got a new quarterback. Christian Darrisaw, you're going to have to go out there. Brian O'Neill, like we need to see with the quarterback change, we need to see the whole offensive line at least out there. And so I do expect more Darnold eventually. I just don't know if it's going to be Saturday in Cleveland.
Sounds good, Andrew. Appreciate all the insights. Follow our coverage of the Vikings all throughout the rest of the preseason. Then, of course, the regular season, Access Vikings podcasts, all that good stuff. New Vikings newsletter, by the way, that our colleague Ben Gessling is doing. That first debut went out last week. Look for that again this week. Andrew, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Andrew. Again, thanks to him for jumping on the show today. I forgot to bring it up with him, and I don't know how much of he saw this because he was at the stadium. I was watching at home in this case, but Vikings had Justin Jefferson mic'd up for a good part of the third quarter, and it was serendipity. It was perfect timing. He was on with Paul Allen. It was right when the long touchdown pass to Tristan Jackson happened. He was on for the next touchdown pass as well. He was great. He was a lot of fun. It was a perfect time to have him on with J.J. McCarthy throwing deep balls all around the field. He was into it. It's just one of those kind of like moments. You get those in-game situations. You're able to do a little bit more of it with the preseason because the games don't matter. The stars aren't necessarily playing, but you never know what you're going to get with those moments. I thought that was just luck, but also good planning on the Vikings' part to have Justin Jefferson on and just him interacting. That was a lot of fun on the broadcast. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go back and take a look. Let's finish with the cooler. Aaron Rodgers, a new book out. Lots of stuff in it. Talks about regret over saying he was immunized a few years ago, which people took to mean that he was vaccinated against COVID, which he was not. A lot of stuff about his family, his personal life in there. This nugget jumped out at me. ESPN kind of recap of this of the book. Apparently, he's still mad about the 2014 NFC title game because he wanted head coach Mike McCarthy to call 6 plays that he, quote, thought were indefensible, that seemed indefensible when they were playing Seattle, that he'd seen Dallas beat Seattle earlier in the year. He thought that they could call these plays over and over again and that Seattle wouldn't be able to stop him, but McCarthy didn't call the plays enough. Packers ended up losing that game, although they should have won. They had a golden opportunity, blew that game on an onside kick, and then lost. So he's still mad about that. It's just that the petty grievances. I love that. Just the petty grievances of Aaron Rodgers and all these things. I'd love to go back and watch that game, kind of knowing. I wish I knew exactly what they were, but I want to kind of know a little bit more about that. But I'm interested in this book. I'm intrigued by it. I don't need to know everything about Aaron Rodgers. That is for sure, but that piece of it stuck out to me. Now I kind of want to go back and watch that game from a decade ago to see exactly what might have been missing. That will do it for me today. Good stuff coming up the rest of the week. I might have Creed guitarist Mark Tremonti on Tuesday show, some show this week. Creed is playing at Treasure Island on Saturday, and good conversation with him. I recorded it late last week. I might use it on tomorrow's show, might save it for later this week, but stick around for that. That's a lot of fun. Should have Royce, I think, on a show this week. Plenty of other stuff, so stick around for the rest of the week. Thanks for listening today. Back at it again on Tuesday.